Welcome to the Almost Local podcast. I'm Maria, your host, and today I'm podcasting from Auckland, New Zealand. Today, on the 1st of April, you can really feel the shift into autumn. The leaves are starting to fall, there's a cooler breeze in the air, and everything feels like it's slowing down just a little. Wherever you are in the world, welcome to Almost Local, a space for real, honest conversations about what it means to build a life abroad. I'm really excited today because I'm here with Jenny. Jenny is from Argentina and we are in New Zealand, in Auckland. So I'm happy to be hosting her in the podcast today and share her journey living abroad. Thank you. So to start, let's begin with 3 words that you would describe your home country, in this case Argentina. Which words would be?
I have many coming to my head, but one is family. So where my family is, or most of my family. The second is probably mate, because I'm completely addicted to it. I
Totally.
drink a lot of it. And the third is, I would say, I don't know if this is the most important, but I would say Messi, because everybody knows him and kind of like our ambassador at the moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm also from Argentina and I think I would use those words as well. So family, because your family is there. It's in Argentina. Mate is the typical Argentinian drink. And Messi, well, I don't think he needs an introduction at school. So, Jenny, thank you for being here and being open to share your experience of life abroad. Tell us a bit about how long have you been navigating life abroad?
I left Argentina in 2003. So I was at that moment 26 years old. And what I was looking for, actually, I left for many reasons. I always wanted to go and study abroad. I originally trained as an engineer, as an industrial engineer. And I always wanted to study abroad, like do an experience. And I was looking into the States, like United States. And the second reason is like a lot of women, or including men, like goes through this. I met a person that was also from the United States. And we had a long distance relationship for like about 3 years. And that kind of accelerated the process, because it might have been that if he wasn't in the picture, he wouldn't have been in the picture.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have left so early, maybe. But he was one of the reasons why I actually accelerated my application to go and study abroad.
Mm-hmm.
And I did an MBA in Boston. It was a very intimidating process to go through, but it was really, really good. And I had an amazing experience studying abroad. And that's where I met my husband. I met Danny. He was one of my classmates. So I came to New Zealand just to travel with him, because we were doing long distance. And this was one of the places where we actually met up and we traveled around. And I loved this place. I always thought, maybe at some point I would love to come and live here. And well, that was kind of like in the distant future. But it's not distant future anymore, because it ended up happening. And this is my home now. But yeah, so I had a really good experience as a student in America. And then I kept working there. I stayed working for a while. And what I've mostly learned in the US was professional. I had a really good experience professionally. It gave me a really good school.
So after studying, you stayed and worked?
Yeah. I moved to New York. I worked in a cosmetics industry, so for Estee Lauder as a young professional. And it was a fascinating experience. But it was also a really good school, because you really have to excel in what you do to be at that high standard level of professionalism. So it was mostly that. But I also saw the other side of it, which it wasn't aligned with who I thought I was. At some point, I told my husband, 2 years into the work, he was also working crazy hours. At that moment, he wasn't my husband. We were living
Mhm.
together. And I said to him, I'm starting to feel that the ultimate goal in life is to get the next Gucci bag. I was becoming someone that I wasn't, because the culture itself, it was like the devil's wears Prada, you know,
Yeah.
like, and I had beautiful mentors in that work. But at the same time, I was becoming someone that
Mm.
I wasn't acquainted with.
Yeah,
That
you
wasn't
didn't
what
recognize.
So we made a decision that we maybe have to make a move. And we both have been here in New Zealand and we loved it. So we said, well, just let's try it. We looked into Europe. At that moment, we didn't have kids.
It changes when you have the kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
It's a little bit different. So we looked kind of, we span the globe and we say, okay, let's try these places.
Okay.
But we ended up deciding to come to New Zealand and we said, oh, let's just try for a couple of years. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that's why we ended up here. And then we moved to Australia for also to try something a little bit different. And then we moved back. We really liked our experience in Australia, but we always knew we wanted to come back here.
Yeah. And when you moved, you came to New Zealand first. You were also in Auckland, right?
Yes, we always
And then
lived in Auckland.
it was Melbourne,
And then we
Australia.
moved
Yeah.
to Melbourne. And here's where we also had our son. So we were living here for a couple of years. We were both working. And then I got pregnant. And Noah was born here. And then we moved when he was 11 months over there. So I was a very early stages of my motherhood when we moved to Melbourne. Yeah.
Mm.
So I think you asked me at some point something about us, like,
How did every place shape you? Yeah. And you were in totally different stages, which is great. For those who are listening, you were young, looking for, I don't know, some kind of adventure, independence, or whatever. Then you started to grow professionally, and then with your actual husband, you were more like looking for a lifestyle. It was more a personal decision connected to lifestyle.
Yes.
And then, well, I suppose again, Australia was related to a mix of lifestyle and adventure.
Yeah. So Australia was the kind of thing that I saw myself living here long term, but I also couldn't yet picture myself not being anywhere else or not doing a different experience before we really settled in a place and lived all our lives. Originally, I ended up living there for 5 years, but originally we were going to try an Asian country as a just learning different cultures. But yeah, we ended up going to Australia thinking that it was going to be a 2-year stint, and it ended up being a 5-1. Part of it because we learned there that my son had special needs. I also got really sick while I was in Australia. So the place shaped me. I always think that Australia was a little bit like a washing machine, you know, like it gave me so many challenges, but it helped me with my personal growth. With a washing machine in the sense that it kind of like
reset yourself, some sort of thing.
A lot of things that weren't serving me anymore, where I had to let go. Like, for example, my type A overachiever thing, you know, like I had always was very career driven. And at that moment, I realized that my identity was very tied up with my career. And when it's almost like life kind of like, we have this saying in Argentina that like you were on top of a pony, right? Like, and life kind of like knocked me out of the pony. Like you were up there thinking that you were like, I don't know, that's where you were going and all your dreams and the career. It was all about the career and that was my identity. And then I had Noah and I got sick.
And then you moved to Australia and Noah was
He was 10 months. So I was on my own with Nanny working very long hours on like not having anyone that I knew. And also I got really sick. I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, which was a very, very tough thing to have as a young mom with a toddler. Also then we discovered that he had special needs. He was diagnosed with autism and cerebral palsy, but that didn't come until later. So many challenges
Oh.
on the way. And I feel like that place shaped my perspective in life. It just made me see it. It was a very strong letting go of identity and realizing that I wasn't my career. The mother, I wasn't, I was all of it, but it wasn't really something that defined me.
Yeah.
And definitely not my worth. It's just like my career wasn't my worth. I feel like this society
Up
is
until that moment.
my worth was
Yes.
very tied to my
Mhm.
career. Like whatever type of job I had
Yeah.
or was
Yeah.
what defined me and
Yeah.
what gave me my worth.
Yeah.
And so I learned the hard way to kind of let go of that. And it's still a work in progress, but yeah, it changed completely my perspective on that front. So yeah, it was a little bit of
That was your experience in Australia.
and a massive how do you say when something kind of reverts of values, reverts of the things that I was of ideas of what I was holding myself, what I was measuring myself against, in success in life and all that. That's where the whole thing started, that whole transformation.
Yeah.
And at the same time, that's where I discovered, or I had discovered meditation in my 20s, but there it was, that's where I sought it a lot more because of it was a lifeline. So meditation for me was one of the things that helped me go through this process a much more awakened way, like, or healthy way. That's where it all started.
Yeah.
I did mindfulness first, and then I learned a similar technique to what I teach here.
So it's funny because the question is, how did the different places shape you? I wonder if you had moved to Japan instead, or I don't know, Bali, whatever, if you had been through the same process. So sometimes we attach things to places like it was the place, but sometimes it's not really about the place, or maybe it was. I don't know. Do you feel like there was something? Because here in New Zealand, you might have like that relaxed lifestyle, the laid back, and we sometimes attach our change in mindset to that. I wonder if Australia was that in a way, or if it has a connection with you discovering about Noah, having special needs, and yourself, and you got sick and everything, or both. Who knows?
I think it was, it's the same question whether things are nurture or nature, right? Like, I think it's both. I think it's the energy of the place, because it's not the only, I'm not the only person. I had this conversation with a few people. I think places have a certain type of energy that that it doesn't mean that it does the same to everybody. But for me, Australia was that kind of acceleration of awakening. It wasn't serving me anymore. I find that the energy of the place was like an accelerator, like, and for me in New Zealand has always been kind of the opposite. It's like I always find very like coming back home to a place of more simple lifestyle and more naturally orientated, like the place in which I enjoy nature and I get that kind of relaxed lifestyle, but it's not always like human connected, or like it can be the society. For me, also, it has to do with the energy of the place. And when I go to the States or when I go to Argentina, I also notice there's a different, almost like a different vibe or a different baseline energy, regardless of what in the surface is going on. There's always like a baseline energy that I perceive, like, so it could be, I think it was both the experiences that were transformative during the time that I was in Australia and the time that I was in the US, but at the same time there is a baseline, I think.
Not everyone connects with the places. Not
Exactly.
everyone is shaped to connect.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're just like still worried about other things. So we don't have enough time to have that awareness of what the places is actually bringing to you or offering.
That's
right?
correct. Yeah. And it's always something that it will, for me at least, it was always in every part and every experience that I had. It was something that, yes, it could actually shake me, you know, like it was difficult, but at the same time, it was all designed for me to
Yeah.
evolve.
Do you feel like it was necessary? I mean, unconsciously, of course, but like it was a step that brought you to the next step.
Yeah. I don't know if it was necessary, but it was definitely, I'm very grateful for. I think that at the level that I was operating at, it was definitely necessary.
Do you ever feel like a bit of nostalgic, like, oh, my time in the US, eventually I'd love to come back there to live again, or with Australia, or do you have that? Or no, this is like, it was a part of my life, a stage or a moment, and that's it.
I feel like that it was a part of my life, which I don't necessarily want to go back to live the same way, but I do miss the people. The people is always that I miss most.
Yeah.
I did leave. I mean, Danny's family is still there, and we have really lovely friends in the States. And also in Australia, I made like the type of sisterhood with 5 of my friends that I always wanted, and it's super strong. And one of my friends is coming now to visit the next couple of weeks. It was such a strong bond that we keep nurturing. So that's what I miss, the people.
Yeah.
Anything else, it's inconsequential. Like I could substitute.
Yeah.
Substitute. And of course, you miss some of the customs. Like in Argentina, I miss the food, but I'm glad I don't live there because otherwise I couldn't control myself.
I agree.
But mostly I miss my family and my friends, the people that knew me from the early stages in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't want to go back to live either into the States, definitely not in the state, in the shape that it is, on the situation that is at the moment. I never wanted. I didn't align with the general culture there. And in Australia, I always knew I wanted to come back here. I'm glad that in a way we were forced to move because the diagnosis of Noah, we wanted to apply for a residency there, but we weren't Kiwis at that moment. We became Kiwis after we came back. And at some point we wanted to stay because we had a really good team of doctors for him and we wanted. But they told us that because of his diagnosis of cerebral palsy and autism, here they would never give it to us because it would imply that he would receive funding. And in a way, it's not that we didn't have a choice. We decided, okay, let's go back to New Zealand. We always wanted to come back anyways. It was just because of fear of losing the medical team and all the support that we had. We stayed for that long. But we always wanted to come back.
So that's the reason you stayed longer than
expected. Yeah. It was because of the support that we had there for Noah.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic team.
So talking about challenges living abroad, for those who are listening and might relate to your experience, but also I think of a lot of people who are considering moving abroad. But what were the biggest challenges for you in this journey? Like,
for me, the biggest challenges were never the practical ones. The practical ones, I always managed to find the support for it. Things like finding a good doctor or finding a house, whatever. You know, like all the more practical, finding a job, even in the places that where it wasn't easy to find a job. But what's harder is the the more the subtle support, the intangible, the less
Yeah.
practical, the more emotional contention, getting to know people that you can relate to. For me, the finding again my tribe, like, or finding and generating the community, the tribe that I felt that finally, okay, I feel like I'm home again.
Yeah.
It's never gonna be like Argentina, but it may be like it's always like I'm finding home. That community. It takes time. It takes a lot of trial and error. It takes a lot of like meeting people, and also like it would have happened in Argentina, like meeting people, feeling that you had a connection, but then maybe not, and going through the grieving process that it wasn't the case, or also including the cultural shocks, like finding even at work, the different cultures, differences that are in the subtle, like the things that you think that they could be misinterpreted, or it's all the tangible stuff. You learn the hard way that wasn't acceptable, but it is really acceptable in Argentina or in my home country. But here is not. And nobody tells you all these things, the subtle things, like the jokes and even the connection that you can form, the bonds you can form at work versus in a social environment. Those things are things that you learn the hard way. And it's a lot easier to do if you have a traveling companion, like it doesn't mean that it's going to be your partner, because your partner is going to be in a different environment.
Dealing his own.
But it's a lot easier if you find someone local or that have been living abroad for a while there. I always found that people that lived abroad were the most open to make new connections. So even if I felt that I was isolating myself a bit because I wasn't necessarily getting together with the local people, it was easier to make connection with people that had been living abroad or were immigrants as well. And the other part that I found easier is like the locals that had lived abroad were the ones that were more open as well, because they had gone through a similar experience and knew what that was. So those for me were the most significant challenges. They were never the practical things.
Yeah, once you tick the boxes of the practical things.
Yeah, which they generate a lot of stress.
Yeah, a lot of stress.
Of
a lot,
course.
because it takes a lot for it depends, right? Some people just quickly they have their visas or work permits or a job or whatever, and it can be really stressing. But then there is, like you said, the intangible, like the what we don't see.
Yeah.
And we might not even see that it's coming, right? Because we are not expecting.
Same as motherhood. Yeah.
Something is like, suddenly it's like, oh, wow, I was not expecting this like that.
To be that challenging. Yeah. So, and for me, it's very important to get into it, like knowing this stuff. Like it's a lot more convenient to know, oh, okay, not to hold yourself to super high expectations that it's all going to be perfect or it's going to be easy, or it's good to say, okay, it's going to be a process. And for me, one of the things that I learned is that it wasn't about the idea or the expectation that I had. The process is actually the outcome. The process is what it teaches you. It's what you want to go through. That's what's going to make you be more resilient or having a home, like feeling at home. It's not like your idea or what it's supposed to be. It's going through the process.
The journey that takes you don't know where. No. Because there is no destination, right?
Exactly.
There is no destination.
Yeah, but it's hard not to have that expectation, right? Sometimes.
Oh, I think it's even more difficult, because when you are going towards a goal, there is something you're going, you are after something.
Yeah.
But when that it's not there, it's just, it feels a bit uncertain, right? Because what are you doing? Why are we here? So I guess once you tick all the boxes of the practical things, which is, for me personally, it's where we are at this moment, because we lived in New Zealand, we returned, but now we are just here for it's been our decision to come here, but a lot of things have already been are done, right? The
Yeah.
residency, the house,
The job.
school, the
Yeah.
job, etc., etc. So then it's like, okay, now what, or what's next, or well, now it's time to enjoy the journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why is it
And
so
it's a lot
difficult to enjoy? You are so with. Why do you think sometimes it's hard
to
for
enjoy. I think it's so my perspective on it. I think living abroad kind of puts a highlight on this. I think that this is a thing that we as humans go through, and it's one of the things that we're here to learn. The whole thing about being in the present moment and be with what there instead of like being in the future and looking at the things that we don't have, that we want, but being present, I think that the only reason why we don't enjoy the journey is because we're focused with the destination and what we haven't achieved yet. A lot of us also live in the past a lot more. And we're missing what's happening now. We're missing the point of being alive. It's a very cliched thing, the whole thing about the small things in life.
Yeah.
But the truth is
But
that
it's
life
real.
is full of small things. Most of our lives is
Yeah.
full of our small things. It's about making our lifestyle, having an education, all the like washing dishes, like this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Those little things are what makes
A lot of
your
life.
day.
Yeah, a lot of it. And even just like having a coffee. Sometimes we're having a coffee and we're not present with that. That's the whole point about mindfulness, which I don't teach and I practice. It's the whole premise of being in the present moment, of having your attention with what there is. And that includes also the things that are not as comfortable, like the fears or emotions that are painful. If we are able to be with them instead of like trying to resist or like avoid them, it's a lot more of an enjoyable journey, because once you go through it and metabolize it, then you can enjoy more of what's there as well. I think that it has to do with something that we think it's human nature, but I think it's what we are here to learn, a lot of us, to move from our conditioning of wanting what there's not, what is not there. And there's nothing wrong about desire and wanting something. But a lot of the times we have a very fixated idea of what that is. And we get very disappointed when we cannot get it, or life takes us in another path.
Yeah.
And we can't present in the journey because we are mourning. Speaking about mourning, one of the challenges of living abroad is mourning, or like the grieving process that happens when you go back home, or like your home country, and then you come back.
The constant grieving, maybe?
It is.
The constant saying goodbye?
Yeah, I guess it is,
Something
but
like
it's
that?
also like, it's a lot more exaggerated, or like a lot more in your face when you go and you experience like your home culture, the family, the bubble that there is, and then come back home and question. Like I personally go through the process every time I go to Argentina. I stay there like 2 or 3 weeks, a month, whatever, and I come back. It's always a broken heart. I leave part of my heart there, which is absolutely fine. It's part of the process. And then I question all the decisions that I made. Like, why am I here? And I go through a grieving process, and when I have to process a lot of emotions and a lot of pain of that kind of like, again, uprooting myself from that. I mean, I put a lot of roots here, but I still feel that a lot of my heart is there. And again, it has to do with the people, with the culture. And then after 3 or 4 weeks, it lasts about 3 or 4 weeks, in which I'm present with everything that happens to me.
Yeah.
And after that, I can again find the reasons why I'm here are a lot. And this is the reason why I'm still living here. But it's not until I go through that grieving process again. So every time I go, I know this is coming, and I'm fine with it. But I know I need to be with whatever's happening and what the emotions that are happening to me.
Also mixed with a bit of unconsciously, maybe a bit of guilt. Like I made this decision, and you question the decision. Is there some
Guilt.
sort of
I hear you.
a little?
And I did
like
have this in the past. I don't feel that anymore.
okay,
But I did have it. Yeah, it was connected with
because it's personal decision, right? You decide to leave your home country and your family and friends, and you deep inside, you know, well, this is because we could be here. I could be here, but I decided to make home a different place. It's my decision to see my family every year, once a year, or every 2 years, or so. There is a small, tiny part of us who feels a bit guilty.
did I make the right decision? Did
Yeah.
I leave them behind?
Yeah,
You know,
something like that. Like, well, I'm sorry, maybe you were not feeling like that, and now I'm putting this into your mix.
Zero, because I was there in a stage. I left 23 years ago when for the first, I would say 10 years of living abroad, I definitely felt that quite strongly. And that guilt made me reassess it many times whether I needed to go back or not. In the early stages, it was a lot of guilt, but also it's tough to start abroad. So I questioned myself. Many of these decisions of leaving my parents or leaving my family behind, did I try hard enough to actually make a living there? And I mean, I had very strong reasons why I left, all coming from a very young perspective. The reasons why I left are very different than the reasons why I'm still here. Yes, there is a difference.
Yeah, and obviously things change.
The guilt came from that. Did I try hard enough to stay? Did I kind of quit my country? Was I too fast at like just kind of running away? Did I run away? Because that's the other thing. Did I run away from my country? And a little bit like 10 years ago, I went through a process of letting go of the real reasons why I left. There was a lot of resentment that in my country, I couldn't do what I wanted to do. And it had to do a lot with career and also with a little bit of fear, because I went through, at that moment, the country was quite unsafe. And I went through a quite scary episode of feeling threatened. Someone put a pistol in my head and robbed me, and my niece was right there. She was a baby and they threatened to kill her and all this stuff. So I processed all of that and I let go of all those emotions.
That's quite of a...
Yeah, it was very traumatic.
Traumatic
but then
moment.
I had the opportunity to actually go into the trauma and work in it, go inside, work in it, and letting go of all those big emotions that were still there. And all the love for my country kind of came up. All that was being masked by those episodes of disappointment and safety. Yeah. And I was like, wow, there was still all this love there that I connected to everything that I found amazing about Argentina. And there also the guilt came back, because I'm like, oh, I didn't see this, but now I still want to live here, despite of the fact that I reconnected with all the positivity that I found there. So guilt came in different stages.
Yeah.
At the moment, it's not a thing that it's present in my experience. I think that when my parents are a little bit older, I don't know if it's going to come in the form of guilt, but I do feel a strong responsibility to make sure they are okay. It came in different stages in my life. At the moment, it's not a big play on how I feel.
I think that all these layers of things that we go through and all the questioning and all these things that we are talking about, these are also challenges that we have living abroad, that well, you are not questioning your life if you're living in your home country. These are not things. You are in your place. You're not. It's a given, right? Everything is the way it's supposed to be. But the minute you step out of your country and you decide to move somewhere else, you have all these extra layers with you, like questioning, and I think that's a challenge itself.
I actually see it a little bit different. When I go to Argentina, I find plenty of people that are questioning why the heck they're still there. You know? Not in terms of family, but in terms of the situation, and if they could have better opportunities abroad. And definitely a lot of people that I know left. I think that it always comes back to what it is the priority and the stage that you're at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It always comes back
point.
to that. Yeah. I think it's something that if you live a conscious life, that you actually are conscious of what's going on within you, and you conscious meaning also aware. I think it's a process that it's always there. Like it's the equivalent of always being aware of what's going on, or maybe evaluating when the green grass it's on the next side, on the other side, or it's on this, like it's always that constant evaluation. It's depending on the priorities. Yeah. It's not that the grass is greener on the other side. It just depends on what are my priorities in life at the moment, at this exact moment. Yeah. And in my case, I think that at some point my parents are going to become again a priority.
So what you're saying, maybe it's like, if we were talking about advice, not having all the answers, it's okay.
Yes.
I would say something like that.
And decisions are also temporary. Like people, you don't have to have all the answers.
Yeah, you don't have.
If we are always very uncertain of making decision, we tend to think that decisions are forever, like you're married. Marriages are not forever either. But it's almost like you have to marry to a decision. Yeah. There might be a price or a cost to changing your path or your.
But what's the cost of not
changing? So we tend to think that everything is like, it has a determinism to it, and it really isn't. It might have a high cost or a more higher price that you want to pay for, but not necessarily. You have to be married with a decision that you think is the best thing now. It may be not in a year.
So that gives a bit of relief, right? It takes the pressure out of the whole thing. Right?
I think it's good to have a deadline. So if you're on the verge of trying a new adventure, it helped me. Like with New Zealand, it definitely helped us. It was like 2 years. We give it 2 years. And we see how it goes.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. That's when we moved to Europe, it was 3 years. But I mean, why?
Why give it a deadline?
We said, that's the deadline we set for ourselves. There was some sort of connection with the job, but I agree it's good to have a deadline. Timeline, framework. You need to stay for 3 years if you're suffering, right?
Exactly.
Or if you are loving it. Maybe
you don't have to cut it short.
You don't have to cut it short, exactly.
But what I'm saying is, like, for me, it helps because it gives me the opportunity to give it my best shot and give it a try. Like, instead of like getting here, finding all the negative stuff and thinking that this is gonna be like that. Oh, I can't tell you. If it is a nightmare, then you can grab your stuff again and move on. Yeah. But I always say that everywhere I went, it took me 1.5 years at least to feel like I was at home.
Okay. Yeah. Like that you're saying this.
Yeah.
It gives for people who are just starting. And I know because I went through that when we went to Europe. And although I knew we needed time, I wasn't patient enough to say, this is a process. You need time. You need a year and a half. So for you, it was 1.5 years. That's
your... 1.5 years. It has to do with making strong. It always has to do with people. Like for me, the community is what gives you the sense of belonging, that you're home.
Yeah.
So it gives you enough time to make significant
true.
connections, even if it's not, they're not going to be like your best friends that knew you from all your life, but it gives you that strong connection with some people. And then the belonging is always, for me, it has to do with people. Yeah.
So those practical things would be, that's where your focus is in the first year and a half, and then you start having time to work into the non-tangible things, the friendships and
That's right.
the
Well,
things that are going to
make you feel like at home.
make you feel like at home.
The practical things for me, it's like usually was not more than 6 months. In 6 months, kind of like you find pretty much, you find kind of everything that you need. Maybe if you're going through a residency process or anything, it might take longer. But in the meantime, you can work on the connections. And that's what takes longer. We tend to take for granted how long it takes to make a deeply meaningful connection with someone and feel at home with other people that are not just your immediate family. And that network, that community, a lot of people find church that's why I think Almost Local plays a great role in that transition, because it accelerates that. For me, it took a year and a half without anything like that. Or if you go to study somewhere, not always. But if you go into a university, you make instant connection. Not at this stage, maybe, because it's harder.
It needs to be intentional anyway. You have to have the intention, because when we went to the Netherlands, I was at a Dutch group. So I was meeting weekly with the same women, and we were studying Dutch, and it was great. And then that group was the start of friendship and going out for dinner, even trips, etc. But it had to be intentional. Like it was not something happening because we meet every Thursday at 9 a.m. We had to have the intention to, okay, let's do coffee. Now let's do this. And we underestimate it, I think, sometimes.
We do make
because we can still survive anyway.
But you have a much richer experience when you feel like you're part of the community. And that's why I think the role of Almost Local, and I mean, one of my biggest community makers, that I'm not a big community maker. I don't have necessarily the skills, or I don't feel that is my thing. Andrea is a massive community maker.
Yeah, naturally, she is naturally inclined.
Yeah, she does that.
Yeah,
naturally. She's not even forcing it. And what I was going to say is that 70% of the people that I know, I probably know them because of her. So it's also a matter of its intention, but at the same time, it's open up your heart and finding the groups or like people like you guys, like Andrea and you, that are community makers.
And the consistency of showing up. And I've never seen myself as a community maker or anything of the sort. And I mean, I enjoy meeting people, making friends, but I'm not the one like Andrea who stands up in the crowd and I don't see myself as that. But I guess after moving so much from an early age, I do recognize how healthier it is to be surrounded by people that you can really connect. I mean, you can be surrounded by people at work, but I'm not talking about that, right? We're just talking about people who you can really understand each other, what you're going through.
And that community maybe work, but it's not the only place that you can find that. Okay, it could be that at work there's a beautiful community happening, but it might not always be the case.
Might not, yeah.
Yeah, it's actually very fortunate if that happens, because that means that you actually share a lot of time.
Very lucky.
And even if you don't consider yourself a community maker, you are facilitating that process with your project. I think it's fabulous, and it's something that was missing in, at least it's missing in many places.
Yeah,
Church used to be, church played a massive role in that, but not everybody wants to be affiliated with a church. So there has to be more secular spaces like this, like what you are creating.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful about that. Even if I've been here for a long time, I still see the value of showing up for these places, on these spaces that you generate.
Well, thank you, Jenny. I'm happy that you see the
Huge
intention
value.
of what you're
Massive.
achieving with Almost Local. Like I said, I lived in the Netherlands for 3 years, and half of the people who live in where we were at in The Hague, it's half of the people, they are expats. And I didn't find any community that had, maybe there is one and I never found it. But you do have a lot of network groups or specific groups, like if you want to learn that, or professionally or for business or whatever. But
expats
it's not the same.
It's a interesting phenomenon because it's such a transitional, like most people that are expats are there transitionally. So some people don't see the value in investing in the community, creating a community if you're going to be there for a couple of years.
But we know it's proven that it can really affect your health.
Mental health. Absolutely.
So that's why I say don't underestimate it, because you can find yourself at home all day talking to your toast maker.
Yeah.
But I mean, for 1 day, for 2 days, but eventually
it's not going to be...
It's going to drive you
mad.
Mad. And the experience in a different country, it's not,
Yeah, I mean, for me, that was what moving to Australia with a small baby was. I was completely isolated.
Yeah, well, that adds a different layer.
Yeah.
And when we came to New Zealand, our son Antonio was just 3. He was the second, and I was, I don't know, 30 something. So I was at the moment where, okay, eventually, are we going to have another kid? This is the moment.
Yeah.
And I thought of that.
No, it was my first one. I was the first one also of my friends to have a kid. And I was completely naive of what being plucked from a place in which I felt like I belong with a small baby and being put in a place that I didn't know anybody with a small baby, a husband that had to pay his dues in a new job would make, not knowing anything. I mean, the practicalities are massive stressors. The feeling isolated completely and sick and like dealing with a constant demand of having a small baby. Yeah. And all the things that motherhood also brings, which is like...
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. That's why I was saying I didn't have the courage to go through for the third. Maybe if we had stayed in Argentina, I don't know. I will never know that.
Yeah.
Maybe it was less scary, but if you are adapting to a new country, understanding the culture, it's a massive change in your life. So you don't want to add something else to that. But I mean, that was what I thought, my decision. But a lot of women have their kids abroad.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't met anyone that didn't say it was a very challenging thing.
Yeah.
Because you don't, like, it's like being without family in a stage in life in which you need a lot of that support, that contention. Like, that doesn't mean that family is always going to help you, but it is the being isolated part, especially when you don't have an established community. When you have your established community, they become your family.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm full of substitute families in New Zealand.
But even going to the doctor, like if you go to the doctor, you understand each other because you are from the same culture and you know how to talk, you know the things. You're not thinking, oh, should I say this? Is this right? Is this wrong? Like you can be just...
You can be a lot more comfortable. because it's the known
exactly.
what you are used. It's a different. Not even like here. I'm talking about countries that I spoke the language, like going into
the practicalities are double.
The stress.
The stress, yes, because you need to do everything in a different language, and especially in a language that is so opposite to your language. Like if it had been Italian, it would have been fine. And suddenly it was like, please stop sending these letters from the government because I don't have time to read all of this because I need to translate and the vaccines and this and that. And it was like a lot. But
so that's a massive added challenge. I didn't have that experience.
But you do have a lot of people who, not you, because you already were almost bilingual in English when you went to US.
That's right.
So, but a lot of people come here with no English.
That's a huge undertaking.
That is a huge undertaking. That makes it.
I saw a lot of people that didn't want to learn. And that may be okay, but it's also very limited. So limiting, that's what I try to say, limiting, because it's always what I always ask myself is that is the emotion or the fear or the discomfort of wanting to learn something bigger than the opportunity that will open up for? I did, when I went to the US, I didn't know English, but I went to study in the first 6 months. Oh my God, this was an Ivy League top-notch university. I was like, all my imposter syndromes were like playing up all the time. Like, what are you doing here? You're not belonging. You don't belong here. You don't even speak the language. Like, it's beautiful ass. But it was almost like I had to go through that pressure cooker in order to come out on the other side and say, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
But it was a pressure cooker. All my everything came out. All my beliefs or my limitations or all my
until your brain kind of it takes a lot of time.
And I could have quit and said, no, it's not for me. But I felt like I had invested a lot. Maybe for someone that hasn't invested so much, they don't feel that the emotion is still the thing that holds them back is still more powerful than the opportunities that it.
I was wondering if New Zealand is your final destination, and we are finalizing this chat today, but we can always continue some other day.
I think so. I see myself living here long term. Yes. I don't foresee having to go through this process back and forth. It's always like for me, it's a day by day election. I'm choosing to be here. And sometimes it's day by day. Like sometimes it's like months that I don't even question it. The things that can change that, obviously, we don't have the crystal ball, so I don't know what could happen to this country, or if something massively wrong, or something goes massively wrong. But I mean, things that I can foresee are my parents. But when I think about my parents, the thing that I think is a temporary. If I go back to live in Argentina, it will be temporary, like maybe a couple of years. And then he always wanted to go live in a Spanish-speaking country. So it could be another adventure. And I suspect it'll be easier because I have a community already there. But the challenges of living in a South American country are also quite overwhelming.
Are also real.
Are also very real and are overwhelming to even think about them. I don't know what my son would choose. That will depend also where he wants to go, or if he wants to go back to Argentina, if he wants to go and live in the States. He has a lot of options that I didn't have growing up in Argentina. He's the citizen of 6 countries. So he can actually...
It's got a lot of options.
But who knows? Maybe he wants to live somewhere else. Not even one of the countries that he kind of inherited.
Yeah. So now it depends on that as well, because it's the same for me.
So I'm always open to the possibility.
Mm.
Not that I'm worried.
Yeah.
I'm just open.
Yeah.
To that something may change, that I may not feel like this is going to be the long term. Who knows? But I definitely, at the moment, I see it as my forever.
This is your home. Yeah.
Yeah. Forever in this lifetime.
Yeah. And today.
Yes, exactly.
In the present moment.
And today.
Yeah. And Shani, this has been a pleasure
Yes,
talking and learning from your journey. A lot of things I didn't know, so I learned today. Thanks for sharing, for being open to be in the Almost Local podcast. We hope we've inspired some adventurous souls over there somewhere in the globe. But thanks again. And well, we'll probably do another chat and talk about other topics.
That sounds great.
So thank you so much.
I just wanted to thank you again for opening the space, for offering this kind of view or perspective to people that want to take the plunge and go, or have taken the plunge and are going through challenges, or even just as a support. I think it's very important and very admirable that you actually are generating those spaces and facilitating the journey for people that are going through.
Well, thank you.
Experience.
Yeah, thank you. And the space is well, I'm the one that opened the space, but it's here because of you. So otherwise, I wouldn't have the voices to share. So thank you
for giving me the opportunity.
And now, as always, I'm off to my morning coffee. But let's keep the conversation going. Wherever you are in the world, you can join the Almost Local Circle through the website or on Instagram. Until the next episode, see you soon.